This is the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. We talk all things health, wealth, and community connection. Let's go. Welcome to the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. Today we have John Kim, the angry therapist, multi-best-selling author. I used to be a miserable fuck. I love that book. And then we got connected through our boy, Brendan Grew. Shout out to Brendan. Last minute, on the last leg of the LA filming tour, you invited us into your home, random strangers.
Yes.
We are in your garage now.
Well, the connection to Brandon gave me the ticket, or else I wouldn't have. If I just had never met you and just you fell from the sky or social media, I don't want to give out my home address and stuff.
Fair, you'd be
but the Brandon connection, I was like, oh yeah, it's all good.
All right, well that worked out. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for inviting us into your home.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So today, I want to jump into a lot about what you've written on, and what was really pressing in me was this grass is greener theory.
Yes.
In relationships, in people wanting to be in a relationship, in people in a relationship wanting to be out of a relationship. How do we cultivate a healthy mindset to be happy with what we do and where we're at?
Yeah.
For contentment and happiness and passion and polarities and just having a healthy relationship with single, married, girlfriend, nothing, all that.
The grass is greener, I think, is more prevalent. It's more of a problem now because of social and because, before when you see someone famous on TV or movies, they could be very attractive, but they're posters. Like, that you have, they're kind of outside. Now with social media, if you see someone attractive and you fill in a lot of blanks, it's your neighbor. Yeah. It's you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So
you could just DM them.
Yeah. And so there's this grass is greener syndrome, I think, more now than ever, because the wall's down and because the movie star has come to the ground, and because of social media. And also the way that we present ourselves, right? So the filters, the cars, the beautiful, people.
We're propping ourselves up constantly to look extra uber attractive.
Yeah. And so I think that tug to believe that there's something better out there. Yeah. And also I got to say, even, forget aesthetics or what you're attracted to, but also there's a lot of people talking about self-betterment, right? And so there could be a lot of people talking about what a better life or better relationship or what healthy looks like, but it doesn't mean that they are practicing that. Oh. So there's also some false advertisement. Yeah. I struggle with a lot of stuff that I talk about. It's all, I'm not perfect at all, especially in relationships. So yeah, I mean, even like someone like me, I could come off as being a certain way, and then you meet me and you're like, oh, he's weird, he's short, he's fucking a hypocrite.
I didn't think any of those things. Yeah. But I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm way more ridiculous in person than I am on the internet. Way more weird. Yeah. Way more weird. Yeah. But I appreciate that about myself. I want to be strange in person because it's fun. Yeah. But the internet and the grass is greener effect, we're in a relationship, but it looks more fun to be single because people are popping bottles at the club. Yeah. Or we're single, we're like, miserable or feel like we're miserable in comparison to those super epic power couples you see on Instagram. Yeah. And there's this pull there where it's just like, yeah, but that looks so much better. Yeah. But is it? What are your grounding practices for people to be like, right now is okay, stop bitching about your shit?
Yeah, first of all, I think that it is a mirage. So when we see someone and they seem like their relationship is perfect. No relationship is perfect, right? There are always problems and issues and stuff that people are either working through or they're not, right? So not putting weight on presentation, I think, is number one, right? So watching something or someone and the shine of that and knowing that that isn't necessarily truth, that's not the documentary, that's the trailer, that's the commercial. So one, just realizing that about social media. And then two, and this I was going to say, with swipe culture now, and I think with the generation that grew up, like the internet was already here, right? With Gen Z.
Totally.
I think that they have so many choices, and their brain is programmed to swipe. Yeah. Or to, I've got options, or, a customization. And so I think with that, we can have less patience, less tolerance, less rolling up our sleeves. Yeah. And then if something feels uncomfortable or not right, you can just label that as, oh, we're not meant to be in bounds.
Oh,
so I think there's a lot of people doing less work, even though the work, quote unquote, has become commercial and the thing to do.
Oh, that's so funny because the work has been cool, but also instant messaging, instant noodles, instant everything.
Yes,
it's just
options.
Everything.
You have options for everything, right?
I can literally open my phone and Tinder swipe away until like maybe I'll marry you, and then 2 weeks later it's like, no, you have real people problems. Swipe.
Right.
It's so accessible. And then I look back at like our parents' generation where the same marriage stuck it out for 40 years, or 60 years, whatever. And I'm like, yo, that looks miserable when I think about it now.
Well, but also, I think the world, and it's changing now, but I think the world puts how long you've been with someone as the measure of happy.
Yes.
And okay, so our parents were together for 40 years, but they also slept in separate bedrooms and hated each other.
Yes.
They just didn't want to get divorced because you're not supposed to, right, or whatever. So,
we were having this conversation yesterday with my friend Sahara Rose, and we're talking about our parents and like, ethnic parents especially, they won't divorce. But they hate each other, and the conversations they have are like so bitchy all the time, and you're like, yo, I couldn't be in that field. Like, I couldn't have that relationship with anyone. That's stressful. I'm out. And so that's like a firm boundary for me. I don't want a relationship with anyone to be like yelling at each other consistently every day over like, you didn't put the thing away, like this kind of shit. But then they'll be okay with then bitching about something that they're unified against, like, oh, this on the news, and then they get together, and then they're like, or like, the kids aren't doing the right thing, like, and then they like are unified in their bitching about stuff. I was like, that's a relationship? I couldn't do it. But they made it through all those hard times and still stayed together.
There is the I do think that the older generation or my generation, I think we it's a generalization, but I think we do stay in it longer. And maybe that is because, I don't know what if it's because of that's what we're supposed to do, or because we didn't grow up with so many options, and we haven't trained our brains to swipe or pick something because something is uncomfortable, pick something else,
Totally. So like we'll put up with less abuse because we're like, I don't need to be hit. I don't need to be abused.
Yes, because we're aware of what abuse is now.
Exactly. So that's not normal anymore. So verbal abuse, we can't do it. But then on the other end of it is we won't put up with the hardship, because that sounds too hard. I can just go elsewhere. And I get this. This was my pattern in my 30s, or 20s, sorry, consistently. Where it's like 2-3 month relationships, super in love, honeymoon stage. And then once it gets real, it's like, actually those fall into the things I don't want to deal with. And like get avoidant, and I'd get into my avoidant and bounce. And then I think a lot of people are like that. A lot of us aren't sticking it out. But when do we stick it out? When do we bounce?
I think I talk a lot about swimming past the breakers, and what I mean by that is in the beginning, yes, dopamine, honeymoon, fantasy,
the best.
And you're exploring someone, so that's exciting, right? And then you realize they leave their socks on the floor. And things kind of like there's a mismatch. You guys don't have everything in common, whatever. And I think the breakers is when things start coming up for you. So if you're an avoidant and I'm an anxious type, that clash. Or if your love language is different than mine, that clash. And also just people growing. In relationships, people are supposed to grow. They're not supposed to be, when they met each other. So as they grow. If people aren't growing kind of together, they're going to be drifting. So anything like that, those are breakers to me. And so you have to swim past that. And swimming past that doesn't mean to ignore. It means to actually process, get into therapy rooms. And this is, the rolling up the sleeves and working. And it's not about trying to find out what's wrong with your partner. It's about bringing it back to you. What is it activating in me? What does it mean? And what do I want to do to evolve and grow from this? And that's going to be that's challenging. It's uncomfortable.
That's juicy. I really like that part.
But when you swim past that, I think because when you swim past the breakers in the ocean, it's actually calm, right? The surfers surf on the short break and those waves, and so I think that takes time. I think that takes a lot of work, a lot of communication, all the tools that we learn from therapy and stuff. But then there is a calmness, I think, after that. Your whole relationship isn't going to be calm, but I think there's a calmness when you're able to get past all of that stuff, and people are now taking ownership of their own piece, right? So here's what I'm willing to own, here's what you're willing to own, and then I think it gets a lot more calm, and I think that's when love starts to have legs.
This is dope. I really like this. What does taking ownership of your own piece really look like?
Your own story, what activates you, your wiring from childhood, your false beliefs, right? I think relationships are about compromise, but not of compromise of self. If you struggle with codependency, family dynamic stuff, so all of it. It's everything that makes you you. That's tied to your story, what you've been through, right? And so we all have different stories, and so taking an honest look at your internal self. Why you do what you do. And just exploring that,
That was actually a huge part in my growth, was to then like dissect why I became me. And then it also let people off the hook for them being them, because I'm like, oh, that's just me in my relationship to my father coming out.
Right.
Or like some of my snap jerk reactions, I'm like, oh, that's learned from my dad, or learned from my mom, like different validation chain issues. I'm like, okay.
Or coming from wounds.
Yes.
Or activating, fear of abandonment, or whatever your story
whatever
is.
it is. And then I was able to like kind of let that person off the hook. Like it's not really them causing that. It's me in this mode that I've learned how to be to get love, that I knew how to love or protect myself from being hurt. And that's playing up again and again and again. But we need to be able to like take first the courage to look at ourselves, to be like, that's not working. What are you doing in relationship? So I like this ownership of your own peace concept. Because
do you have addiction in your blood? Were you an addict?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge piece.
Yeah,
because the behavior from that, even if you are sober, and you may not be using, there's still behavior patterns, residue from, of course, right?
100%. And that was something big that I had to see about that, was like wanting, like the craving. I wanted more, I wanted more. Sure. And so addiction was big because I was a drug dealer, and I had so much drugs around me all the time, and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. So if I wasn't happy, I was dealing drugs, but I had drugs to numb the pain to keep dealing drugs. It was just this cycle.
So let me ask you this. So if you were a drug dealer, and if you were successful at it, not a lot of people are saying no to you, right? You're in a position of power. What you say kind of goes. There's also something exciting about it's dangerous, the high of it,
Big time.
And then also using the drug, right? So you take someone like that, and then you put that person into a relationship, and like, I mean, well, at first it can be exciting because I think also it can be attractive because you're now the bad boy, you're unpredictable, and then so there's a lot of like sticky, animalistic attraction in the beginning. But then if you want to build a healthy, sustainable relationship, for someone like that, to ask someone like that to now look inward and respond instead of react, and to humble yourself or whatever. That's a big ask.
It was very interesting when I was like at the top of the game in my little mini world, right? Because it was like, hey babe, want to go to Boracay next week? Like it would just be like this, or like, oh, we got in a fight, here's a Louis Vuitton purse. Like I would buy my love, and I would use my power and the stature of who I was as a wand to just bless over all the shit that was just bad, negative addictions, and I was horrible, and my temper, because you had to assert dominance in that world in the sense of you had to be aggressive so you wouldn't get fucked with. It's a protection mechanism, but I got that because I was bullied in high school. And that's why I wanted to be a drug dealer, because I didn't want to get fucked with anymore. So this was just a whole mechanism, and that played out in the relationship. And I realized I was setting up this unhealthy dynamic because money would buy me, like I would attract in women, and they were always like actually pretty solid, but they liked the bad boy, and they liked the lifestyle I provide. They wanted a nice gangster. I wasn't ever really I wasn't actually really a gangster. I was a hustler, but they wanted that bad boy,
a hustler with awareness.
Yeah. And so it was like they wanted that, and so I'd be nice to them, but I still had that edge about me. But if they didn't do the things that I wanted them to do, there was an imbalance because I'd pay for everything. So it was like I provide an amazing lifestyle, but you then have to keep me emotionally happy.
So there was a transaction. 100%. It was transactional.
100%. It was like, I need you to cook, clean, make me happy. We need to have sex whenever I want. And it was this like unhealtty dynamic. And then I realized...
But that's good for a while, obviously.
Right? It was awesome for a while. It was awesome.
How long does that last? A year?
About a year or two.
And then let me ask you this. Then also, does it get boring for you?
Yes.
Because there's no challenge. No one's saying no to you. No one's saying, go look in the mirror. Exactly. I don't want to cook for you and I don't want to have sex with you. Yeah. Go take care of yourself.
Because then I'd be like, off with your head. Like I wouldn't want to, I have so many choices.
Yeah. You're like, I don't need you.
I don't need you anymore. Right. You're not making me happy. We're not growing together, and not even growing together. You're just not doing what your function is. And I have unlimited choices.
So that means that you're not swimming past the breakers, you're swimming in the riptide.
Yeah.
Which is exciting, It
was, because it was a lot, it was volatile, it was exciting.
On to the next.
Yep, on to the luxury vacations, it was just like so much stimulus. Yeah. But the challenge aspect, wasn't proper, because at that stage all my drug dealer friends were all like, you have a girlfriend, a side chick, go out with the boys. It was very toxic, and that culture got into me deep.
Was that your 20s or 30s?
Yeah, 20s. I got out of the drug game at 26.
Okay,
and thank God. And then it spent years deconditioning, all the deep work, all the plant medicines, all the therapy, all the coaching, all that. I went balls deep on my personal development to help uncouple these negative patterns, to see why I did that, and to see that I kept calling in relationships that were toxic because I created the toxicity. Yeah. I actually dated awesome girls, but it was me creating this like unhealthy balance of, I buy everything, you make me happy. If you don't make me happy, you're not doing your job.
Right.
And
it's very lopsided from the beginning. But also at the same time, someone is aware of that, even though it's not announced. It is there in energy, and also they are signing up for it. Well, they're not blind to this.
No, they knew what's up. Yeah. But then after once the dust settled, I didn't respect them as much, because they didn't have that backbone to stand up for themselves, in the sense of, you do like that's an unhealthy balance. But they wanted to be in a relationship where everything was taken care of, and they just got to be, in their, I guess, toxic feminine, and I was in my toxic masculine in that sense, right? Yeah. So they're just like super submissive. To a point where they didn't have a backbone in that space.
Or a sense of self.
Yes. Yeah. And then I didn't respect them because they didn't have their sense of self.
Right.
I was like, what do you
so that relationship is designed to not last.
Totally.
It is a temporary ride, right? Yeah. So, it's loops, and, it's like the Goliath of roller coasters, right?
Totally.
But there is an end to this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that may be a year. For some people, it's 3 years.
Yeah.
And then of course, get on another ride.
When I moved out to Bali, and I moved with my ex-girlfriend, she helped me leave the drug game. God bless her. She's an amazing human. The relationship didn't last too long, because I was skyrocketing towards my growth and just shifting who I was. So I started not being the same person that she had moved there with, and she wasn't into the same lifestyle in Bali, because it was quite like hippie-esque. So she wanted to move back to Vancouver and do her thing. Awesome human.
Were you in love?
I was, but I don't know if that was a real healthy actual love. Yeah. Like, I don't know, because I was a fucking volatile, crazy, insecure human. Like, I don't really know. Yeah. I was fueled by needing to get high off every and anything. So it wasn't just drugs, it was just like the thrills, the money, the power, the status, the validation. I was addicted to the full realm. And then when I started really working on myself, what I wanted changed and differed. And then relationships started to actually get healthier. But I went through that whole roller coaster too, because then I wanted the spiritual girl. Yeah. And that was the whole thing too.
You know how dolls, I know Barbie does this a lot. They have the executive girl. They have the Barbie and the Corvette. They have the yoga girl. They have all these different. You wanted the box set.
Oh,
or you would skip around to this type.
I would, because then I went for like uber spiritual girl, and I dated this tantra teacher who happened to be like probably the only girlfriend I'll ever not want to be friends with, because she was quite toxic. She was really, she had a lot of core wounds that allowed her to be unaccountable. And
wait, can I just insert sorry to cut you off, but within our field, it actually attracts a lot of wounded people, obviously, who are on their journey. So,
have you been to Ubud in Bali?
That's
the like.
Is it the epicenter?
That's the epicenter of like wounded.
That's where people come. And then they find yoga. And they find all this other stuff.
The term of Ubud means medicine in Balinese, like obat is the actual root word of it, and so it's a healing space, and there's a lot of healing going on there. But if you're attracted, it's a healing space. There's a lot of people that are broken going to heal, so it's a huge thing of just like people needing to heal, and it's messy and it's beautiful but messy. And so I got caught into this relationship, and when I started growing and seeing, and my friends had an intervention, they're like, you have to break up with this girl, she's gonna ruin your life. And I realized like, oh shit, like, okay, I got out of the bubble. And I've fallen deep. I'm a lover, but also I had all these weird patterns that I need to unearth. So, and then I realized, okay, this super spiritual girl, fuck that. Like that's just a different set of the same problems. It's just a different set of costume on that.
You thought being you thought being with the spiritual girl would be healthy, but it went the other way.
It went vastly the other way. Holy shit.
Which is proof that just because you're spiritual doesn't mean that you're healthy, right? Or just because you're a therapist, or if you're a coach or whatever. We're all people. We all have our stories.
Same, just different clothes on the Barbie.
Yeah.
And so that was a big one for me. And then I swung the other way, and I got a girl who rode dirt bikes, and that was the Tengu girl. She was awesome. We're still good friends.
Adventure girl.
The adventure girl, the adventure Barbie. She had her dirt bike, and she's a designer, and she's a creative genius. She does the branding for this podcast. She's a gem of a human, and I'd still friends with her forever because she's a great human. It just wasn't totally aligned for either of us. So okay, we could stay friends, but it wasn't like I went super far off the spectrum. But I tried, and just like my spiritual journey, because I went from like drug dealer pretending to be a thug to I had mala beads and a beard and wanted to be like super yoga guy. Like,
do you have a beard?
Oh yeah, nice. I wanted to change my name. I wanted to be like full fucking hippie, you know.
Wait, are you technically Asian?
I'm Punjabi, yeah.
So we're both Asian, but I can't grow any facial hair. I could just grow one long hair.
You could be like
grow a full beard.
I could grow a full beard in 10 minutes if I just concentrate right now. I'll be like a chia pet.
Yeah.
You know, it was like we're Punjabi people are the ones with the big beards and turbans and swords. So beards are in my blood. Yeah. And so I was going for it. And then I came back to the middle path of.
So you look like a wise guru.
I could look wise.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. And so that was like the middle path for me. And I wanted to know about, you know, in dating and therapy, of like people go through these like those extremes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of like how you're trying to swim through the riptides.
Yeah.
Because you're in this crazy extremism. Yeah. What does it look like to come back to center? And that's where my practice came into when I finally got past the breakers, I guess, in my own life, not just dating, but like, okay, I'm actually all things.
Yeah.
What does that practice look like? Is there a clinical terminology for it where people just stop living in extremes and start getting to a more of a grounded space?
I think it's different for everyone.
Okay.
You know, I'm about to turn 50 and I'm still figuring out what my center is. And I think what's tricky is our center is a moving target, meaning as our definitions change, we have to adapt to them, right? So my definition of love today is very different than in my 20s. You know, I was like you. I have your tendencies. I have addiction in my blood. Impulsive, very attracted to like submissive. You know, I'm an Aries also.
Me
so
too.
I'm fucking fire.
I'm Aries, Scorpio.
So I'm hot tempered. Highly sexual, like, you know, all this, you know, also I'm needy, I can be a child.
We're the same person.
Yeah, we should date each other.
We should definitely date each other.
And so that obviously didn't work. And so years of, you know, trying to figure out what my center is, what is healthy, what is not healthy, what's the work that I need to do. And it's ongoing. I think it's until we die, right? Yeah. And so I think our groundedness, our center, like enlightenment, isn't I'm here, like the X marks the spot. I think it's always kind of like moving. Okay. And I think as we live, we're always trying to get in that you know, hit the target. Yeah. And I think it's an ebb and flow. I think it's like life. It's fluid. Yeah. So I don't think like, I'm here. Done. Yeah. I'm at my potential, or I'm enlightened now, or I am, you know, bringing the most to the table in a relationship. I think it's always moving, you know.
That's interesting. So we would need to then find out what center would look like for us now, and a continuous process of finding a center. But that center is going to change.
Right.
Sounds fucking hard.
It is hard, man. It's abstract. It's hard. But I think one of the things to look at is your definitions, right? So whatever your definition is of, whether we're talking about love, definition of a man, definition of husband, wife, father, whatever it is, we will try to trace those definitions. And so I think one, giving yourself permission to change definitions, and then two, is that definition coming from a solid self, an authentic self, or is it coming from a pseudo self? Is it coming from old blueprints passed down by parents? Is it coming from ego? Is it coming from, you know, and I think that's what's tricky, right?
Is that what a pseudo self is?
Pseudo is the false version of you. Pseudo self is I always say, because after my divorce, I realized that I exchanged a lot of truth for membership, right? Grew up in LA, shiny things, Hollywood. I was a screenwriter. And so I was exposed to I mean, LA is just shiny, man, tinsel, right? Yeah. So the nice cars and the beautiful women, and I was always like, God, if I could just sell the $1 million screenplay, then I would be quote unquote happy. And that was very pseudo-based. It wasn't pseudo-based when I was in film school and I genuinely loved writing, but something changed where I was like, now it's not about the writing, it's about trying to sell something to fill something inside, because then I would have the external, right? And maybe for you, a lot of drug dealing was like that, I don't know, right? And so that was very pseudo-based. And then divorced, chopped me at the legs, and I had nothing, no friends. I got on Craigslist, found a roommate, and I just started with, I was 35, and I started with nothing, man. So I said, okay, well, I don't have anything, so I have nothing to lose. Yeah. So I'm gonna start with, what would my life look like if I started pulling from my solid self, which is usually the quiet whisper. It's not the thundering voice, that's the pseudo, right? And so I said, not only the macro, but the micro, right? Like if I'm gonna have a donut, am I actually allowing myself to have a donut? Am I enjoying it? Am I being mindful? Or am I numbing and hiding, right? So one donut may be your solid self, a dozen donuts probably your pseudo, right? Yeah. So I started doing that with everything, man, with relationships, with fitness. I discovered CrossFit, got all into that. That came with community. And then as a therapist, I was like, okay, what is pseudo and solid? And I thought being a therapist meant tucking your shirt in. I worked in high-end rehab centers in Malibu, a lot of them shady. And I did it for prestige, or because what I thought a therapist looks like, the DSM, the latte, Dr. Drew kind of thing, right? Yeah. That was always the dream, and it didn't feel right. It didn't feel solid. It felt very pseudo. And I was like, well, what would it look like to be a therapist, John Kim? Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna ride my motorcycle to coffee shops and meet people there, which you're not really supposed to do. I'm gonna take walks with people, which you're not supposed to do, clients. I'm gonna, now I started a blog. I'm gonna talk about my feelings. You're not supposed to really show yourself as a therapist. But this is where I felt the most solid. Yeah. And that's what evolved into everything that I want, which is, not punching a clock. Yeah. And then that's when the book deals came and all that. So I think if you live in your solid self, stars line up. You start attracting things, people. When you're in your pseudo self, I think you flip the magnet.
I love this. This is a beautiful concept because I feel like it also will help us navigate the grass is greener, to come full circle in that sense, is that if we're living from our solid self, you can really navigate how green your grass is and whether you want the other.
Yeah, so I think when you are, and this also overlines the word you're saying with the groundedness, right? When you're in your solid self, you are able to appreciate, even though it's hard, you're able to see the beauty in what you have more than seeing the fantasy in something else and wanting that. I think when you're pseudo-based, because I was pseudo-based, you don't see what you have. I didn't see anything, and I was with, I had things, but they were minimized. They were on pause until I got the better things. And so when you're pseudo-based, your focus is on the other person's lawn. Yeah. When you're solid-based, you don't really, you might notice it, but you don't want their backyard because you like what you've built. Yeah. So that's a good sign, I think, overall to know.
That's huge because that actually really helped me get a hold of womanizing addiction, that end of it. When I started actually building a solid self for myself, I actually could really just be a good friend to beautiful women and need nothing.
And not sexualize them.
Not at all. It's just like, I love you for you. Yes, you're beautiful. Kind of like I see a Ferrari go down the street. I'm like, great car. I love it. Yeah. Not my car.
Yeah, you don't want it in your garage.
I don't need to jump in and drive it. It's okay.
Yeah. But granted, also when you were at the peak of drug dealing and womanizing and all that stuff, you were 26. So age also matters.
I was 24 when I was the worst. It took me a couple of years to get out because I realized I was fucking up.
So it's easier for a 49-year-old, I think, to look at himself than a 24-year-old. Yeah. Come on. I would not have any of the discipline if I was given that kind of power. Yeah. Women, money at that age. Yeah. I don't think I'd be alive.
I almost died.
Yeah.
Many times. But I'm really happy it happened at that age. Now I'm turning 35 in a week. And I'm like, hey, I'm happy that happened at that age.
Wait, in a week?
Yeah, April 3rd.
I'm turning 50 in a week. Wait, when's your birthday?
April 3rd.
April 10th.
No way, cool.
Close.
Aries for sure.
Yeah, hardcore Aries.
We should date each other.
So like now, if I had that power, I wouldn't. It's not like I would be repelled by it. I would still go live like Dan Brazilian for a weekend. Yeah. I would just come back home. I still have that pull. I think
it's impossible to not have that pull. I've been talking about this with all my friends too. I'm like,
It's baked in me.
When does it go away? And they're like, fucking never.
Dude, it's like hunger. I mean, you eat, you get full, and you crave.
Yeah. So how do you manage cravings from a grounded place?
Oh, man, I think you have to realize what is healthy for you and what is not healthy for you, you know? Like, one of the things I'm getting into is ice plunges. Right? I do them at my retreats, and I fucking hate them. I mean, who likes...
They fucking suck.
Yeah, they suck. But I know the benefits.
But they're good for you.
They're good for you. It's, testosterone, metabolism, all this stuff, right? And so I know it's not good for me, but I also know that... I know it's good for me, but I don't like doing it. Yeah. And so I think that's the work or the challenge, is to actually do it and then work through your resistance, you know? So
I really like that, because I've been staying at Lucas and Hella's house, and they have like a epic dope sauna, like you have a biohacker with a cold plunge in there.
They'll go back and forth.
Yeah, go back and forth. And I'm in it, and it was fucking cold. And I haven't done it for a while. So if you don't do it for a while, it's super cold. Yeah. So first time I got in, I was instantly a bitch. Instantly. I was screaming. This fucking sucks. I was glad no one else was around for that one. But also, if someone else is around, I'd probably be like tougher about it. Of course. So I'd be like, oh, this is fine. I'm good. Biohacking. But really, it's so fucking cold. Yeah. And then when you tell yourself this is good for you, actually it switches for me. So I'm in it, and I'm like, this is good for you, and remind yourself of the benefits of it being good for you. And I think that's a really good catch for me, because then when I tell myself it's good for me, I actually want it more, like eating broccoli or anything like that. I'm like, this is good for you. And you're like, okay, this is good for me. And also in the stance of what's bad for me. So, it happened for me when womanizing or drugs or the buying flashy, stupid shit, just like, I would have to tell myself, this is bad for you. Yeah. And then I would say, this is good for you. And it'd be like, sit mindfully, go for a walk, look at the sun. And actually, it helped me mentally. So that grass is greener thing, I'd have to actually say, that's bad for you. Yeah. You don't want that Ferrari. You'll crash it. You crash a Ducati, you don't need a Ferrari, bro. Yeah. Okay.
You know where I get my motivation is, so just to piggyback off that, when you're in a relationship, once you have lived a little and have learned and looked back and see the patterns and all your dysfunction, choosing to love someone who is good for you isn't always sexy, isn't always, doesn't always give you the dopamine, right? It's actually sometimes like the ice plunge. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. You want to get out. But if you can sit in that, because you're wiser now, that this is the kind of love that I want. There's a realignment that I think happens where the good for you, then you start to crave, right? And then what you used to be attracted to now repels you. So I think there's a journey to get there, but most people don't get there because they get out of the ice so fast. Yeah. You know? So with love, I think we all know or we have an idea of what's good for us, but we don't always choose to be in something that's good for us because what's bad for us feels better, whatever, is warmer. You see it
all the time. Like I had it in a while where I'd be like, dating OnlyFans girls, and that's not good for me. I'm not saying that all OnlyFans girls are bad. I just mean a couple that I had before the Ducati crash, that's kind of where I was at. And so I was on a big, huge personal development. Like I was saying before we started, like I plateaued for a bit. So I was on this huge rise in my personal development, and then COVID hit. I felt stagnated. My businesses got crushed. I was destabilized in the sense of self. So I started acting out, is what I'd say. Old patterns came through. Yeah. Get a flashy bike, get your kicks, date a girl who was, a model and not model. And it was just turned out bad for me because I wasn't living in my Dharma again. I was out of my path for 3 months.
How do you know that you're out of alignment? How do you know?
I felt it, those little whispers. Yeah. I just felt it, and it was like, you need to slow down. Yeah. You need to stop what you're doing. You need to slow down. But I wasn't really listening to it. I was living in a sense of craving, because I was living in a place of I was losing a lot of money from having these brick and mortar businesses and zero tourism on the island. And so I was paying rent or lease, and I had a contract to pay the lease, and I was just getting crushed, you know? So I started living in a place of like fear and grasping of I need to make money, I need to be this guy, and it was that created a pattern. Whereas if I just stopped that and actually just realized hey, stillness is the way in this situation. Stop acting out of a needy place and trying to pacify yourself. Yeah. Maybe the accident wouldn't have happened, but I'm really happy the accident happened. I'm actually, it was exactly what I needed to reshuffle the deck, right? And then
so the motorcycle accident is what stopped you from all of that.
Oh, yeah. It stopped me from a lot of things.
I mean, you physically couldn't do anything.
Taking a shower. It stopped me from everything. And that reshuffled the deck. And I think a lot of people go through like the worst breakup they've ever had, or like, you know, the heartbreaking this or this or this. And they're like, I'm traumatized forever. And what's your answer to that, in the sense of like, yeah, sure, you could be, but here's a way to reframe the worst shit that ever happened to you, the worst breakup, the worst heartbreak. How are you coaching people to use that for power?
Yeah, so I believe in act breaks. I believe in one story. I think that our stories are the most powerful, most valuable thing we will ever own, right? And so if you are in a dark place, if you had just broke your legs from a motorcycle accident, or you went through a divorce, or whatever you're going through, it's not a new chapter, it's an act break. And the thing about an act break is it changes the entire story because of this one event, right? And now it shoots the protagonist into a hero's journey, right? There's going to be discomfort. There's going to be slaying of dragons. And then when you return to the village, you're going to be different. So I think knowing that if you're going through any kind of hardship that is life-changing, whether you've lost your kids, or there was an accident, or there was a death, or your marriage is falling apart, whatever it is, you have a choice. And depending on your choice, if you decide to lean into your story and the hero's journey, on the other side of the act break usually is a more compelling story, right? There's a character arc, right?
When you mean act break?
So in stories and movies, and there's 3 acts: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So I think your motorcycle accident wasn't just another chapter in your story. I think it was pivotal. I think it was an act break. Also, act breaks, they tend to happen almost overnight, like a divorce, an accident, someone died. It changes or you have a baby. Like, it changes your life almost overnight, but it changes your life 360. It changes your life significantly, where you have a choice to either now lean into this and build something, go somewhere and come back, or you could ignore it. And then that can be the end. Or that can be like, right, like you won't have much of a story. Stories happen through plots turning, through act breaks, and the protagonist not only being thrown up in the tree, but then rocks being thrown at him. And you know what I'm talking about? And then if you just jump off the tree, there's more story, right? So.
I really like this. I really like that actually to own your story, and that the worst shit that ever happened to you is just an act break. So why don't you
move you forward?
Yes. Use the plot. Own the plot to then write the best story that you've ever lived and ever told. And so out of breaking all my fucking body, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch how I think. I'm gonna get through this like a boss. I'm gonna learn how to walk again in record-breaking time. That was fucking hard. I rebroke my leg 4 months in, 8 more months of recovery, 3 months in the wheelchair, 8 months in crutches. It was around. But then now I feel like a sharper human. Like, I feel sharper from all that. And I was like, this was a massive blessing. I'm gonna write this as just one of the awesome things that changed my life, and then grow from it. But I could have used that as like, why did this happen to me? Like, my life fucking sucks.
So if you do nothing, or you stay in victim mode, you could have stayed in the wheelchair, probably gained a lot of weight, been depressed, and there isn't much of a story. It's a guy that did drug club, whatever, got a motorcycle accident, that's kind of the end.
And then fizzles.
But you went the other way. You're like, okay, I'm going to walk in record time. And so now, and then you hear the Rocky theme and shit. But, now there's a turn in the story. This is the underdog. This is now you climbing. This is where the story gets interesting. Now the audience is because if you were just doing victim mode, no one wants to see that. I'm leaving. But now we are seeing the character arc, right? Now we are seeing the basement guy surfacing, and that's super exciting. And then so now here you are, evolving, growing, doing all these amazing things, and you may have another act break. You may lose it all. Like, I don't know.
Whoa.
I mean, hopefully not. Or not. Maybe I don't know. But I think that's the way to look at you being in the trenches or quicksand, is that they are act breaks of your story, not that God hates you or something happened to you and you're now in a prison.
I really like how empowering that is, to own your story and then to rewrite it. Use the pivotal moments as act breaks. And then what I like about that is, because I think about this too, when I was all laid up in the hospital, couldn't move, I was like, write a damn good fucking, like, use this as something you're going to talk about in the sense that make this the best story you ever told. And when you look back at your life at the end of your life review, you've died, you look back at your life, make sure that's a good story. Like, make sure that's an entertaining thing to watch. So do the shit that's going to make this a great story that you'll be happy to watch again. And I think about that a lot. So also in breakups or in just like disagreements or friends or whatever, like, handle it in a way you'll be proud of. So you look back at it later and you'll be like, you did well. Not be like, oh, you were a bitch about that. Or like, oh man, you were such an asshole. Like, why did you do that? Like, that's something I think about a lot. Like, not if other people knew about or saw or all that. It's just like, how would I actually handle it within myself? And that helps me feel a bit accountable. And also then it makes me sometimes even more reckless in the sense that I'm like, well, you might as well make it cool. Like, you might as well go for it so it's interesting to you. Do you ever think of your life like a movie in this way?
That's all I do. I think of, I apply the story or the hero's journey to everything. I mean, I could take a workout, right? I could take a CrossFit workout, go into it knowing that it's going to get uncomfortable, you know, at 10 burpees in, knowing that I'm going to be chopped, knowing that I'm going to have self-doubt. And then somewhere in that workout, there's going to be getting up at the knee. There's going to be getting up to your knee. There's going to be an act break. There's going to be a shift. You know, and then, you know, insert the Rocky song. There's going to be me having to slay dragons, whatever that is, right? It could be a mile run. It could be whatever it is, right? And then I know at the end of that workout, I'm going to come back changed. And I know on the ride home, I'm going to either feel good about myself or not, right? So I could apply that to relationships. I could apply that to the 3-minute ice plunge. I apply story to everything. And I think... when I say that your story is the most valuable thing you will ever own, there's a tipping point where actually you do own it in that you have the power to write your own story. But when you die, that's your contribution, right? So like when I think of someone like Bruce Lee, I don't remember like, you know, fight number 43. I see a guy who came from China to America when there was a lot of racism, dated out of his race, invented his own martial arts, got into the entertainment business, and like I see his whole story, right? And to me, that's what's powerful. Not that he had a 3-inch punch, or not that he could do a certain thing, right? Okay. But it's the arc of his story that he leaves behind that I think then throws a wide net and people learn from. So your story's bigger than you is what I'm saying.
That's gold.
That's the motivation ultimately for me is. Yes, I own my story and that I can write it and rewrite it, but when I leave, it's bigger than me.
That's beautiful. How do you relate that into specifically relationships, to circle back around that? How do you have a story arc in relationships, or just to keep the story going?
Well, in relationships, we go into them because they feel good, and we want, you know, intimacy, sex, connection, and all that, which is great, but I think if you look at relationships, like, and it's challenging for me too, right? Yeah, that they are bigger than you. Meaning there's you, there's your partner, and there's what you guys are building, which is greater than its parts. Then you could kind of go into it almost through a spiritual lens, right? That you are colliding with this person, and instead of putting weight on the promise, which we do, right, in culture, like, are you going to be with me forever? Make me that promise, give me that ring. It's more about how is this collision going to change me and the other person, and how is that bigger than us? Then you see the relationship as not this thing that I want, but this thing that I'm contributing to that's going to be catalyst to our individual growth, and then what we're creating is bigger than us. And so to me, that is more powerful than I just want to love someone who's hot that makes me feel good. You know what I'm saying? But that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's just sugar. And the protein in a relationship is sometimes it's medicine, man. It's not always sweet.
I really like that. That's really grounding, and I think that a lot of people will get some value out of that. So I know we got a dip soon. What are some of the things that you can get through from your new books? Because I used to be a miserable fuck. That was gold for me.
Oh, thanks, man.
And we got the new ones back here. Single on Purpose.
Single on Purpose was actually the most successful book. It's giving singlehood a cape. And
singlehood a cape.
Yeah,
this
because
is great.
Most clients I had when I wrote that book were women in their 30s who felt that society's ticking clock, and they thought they were less than because they weren't partnered. And I couldn't help them find someone that wasn't my job, but what I could do is help them connect to themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't say single forever. It's just find you before you find someone else.
This feels a lot like water your own grass. Like enjoy your grass and make your grass fucking awesome.
Yeah.
The grass is always greener. Well, why don't you just make your grass better?
Yeah, and it finds you while you're finding someone else, not before, because I don't think finding yourself is a one-time thing. I think it's a forever thing. Yeah. Right? Even when you're in a relationship, you are always connecting, disconnecting, and building your relationship with self. Yeah. So I think that should be a priority and something, a piston that should be pumping while you're looking for love or choosing who you want to love, you know? And then the last book is called It's Not Me, It's You, and it's my first book that I co-authored with my partner. And it's two therapists talking shit about each other. It's two therapists pulling the curtain back and showing the world that relationships are not easy, and that just because we're therapists, that our shit still stinks, and we're working through our own stuff. So
that's really like disarming, and I appreciate that, because in that grass is greener world, we often think that people that are in a teaching position or out there are like, oh, they got their shit together. Yeah. And I talk a bunch of shit about myself on the podcast, and I'll talk about this stuff because I'm like, yo, I'm not perfect, but look, I'm living a great life. I love my life now. Yeah. Because I was able to look at this shit and actually just like be like, I fucked up so many times and I still fuck up, but it's okay. I like my grass. Yeah. It's okay.
What are you now, age-wise?
35. I'm turning 35 next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Young. So you at your life is when I hit my rock bottom.
Yeah?
You're going up. I was 35 is when I got my divorce.
Okay. Yeah, I'm grateful that I hit mine multiple rock bottoms in my earlier. So now I can but I still, even now I'm like, yo, I'm turning 35. I need to have my shit together. I should be, worth tens of millions. Wow. And it's like, life's expensive, man. It's hard to be worth tens of millions.
Yeah. But that also may be pseudo. That also may be you putting definitions of success.
That's grass greener right there. That's right there. My friends are ballers, and I'm like, okay. Yeah. But
I purposely choose to be friends with people who have less than me. So
I'm
just kidding.
Well, thanks for being my friend.
It's hard to be friends. It's hard to be friends with people who have private jets. Because, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's very interesting, that world. But then also, it is nice to have people that are doing it. Like, I love that you've authored best-selling books. Like, I want to get closer to you in that sense. To also, it's inspirational. So it's not a jealousy thing. It's just like, hey, this world exists, and it's now in my reach. Yeah. There's these people that are doing it.
Kevin Hart talks about that a lot. That whole thing that who you surround yourself with is going to directly impact you, right? Yeah. Like, what is it? The
5 greatest. The sum of the 5 people that are closest to you.
Right. It's telling of how
It's super important. I'm like, oh, you stop hanging out with drug dealers, and like my life got better.
Exactly.
It got way better, and a lot of them are dead or in jail, and it's hard now. It's like, wow, okay, story checks out, right? And so having amazing friends really matters. Having great people close to you in your life really matters, and having great podcasts to listen to really matters. Having great books to read really matters. So please, everyone, get all of John's books. They're really worth it. He's got retreats coming on.
I'm Korean, no refunds.
No refunds at all. You got to do this. You got to do the work. If you don't like his book, it's because you fucked up. Thank you so much for coming. Us for having us.
Thank you for coming to me. That's amazing.
Appreciate that.
I wish I could do all my podcasts like this. Just come to my house.
Just make that a prerequisite. Yeah. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Yeah. Be well.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ink Pray Love podcast. I hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, funny, and also feeling a little bit more present and connected to yourself. Please leave a review and like and subscribe and do all those things. I'd really appreciate that. As well as, if you're feeling in a giving mood, this podcast is there for the charities that I love to support. Go to www.arenbaya.com/charity and get some of those good karma points. This podcast is brought to you by LightHouse Studios in Bali, as well as Full Reset Coaching. That is my coaching practice. And if you're looking for help in business, inner game impact, and building your legacy to be something you're proud of, your brand, your business, and how you walk the earth and who you impact, and also having the mindset and the heart set to be able to be happy handling it all, I'm here for you. Just DM me. Let's go. Peace out, homies. I'll see you on the next episode.